Hello, it is Wednesday, January 26th, 2022. I'm Chris Remo, and welcome back to the New York Times Crossword Daily Solve. Now, this is going to be quite a ridiculous edition of this, of the Daily Solve. I apologize for for what this video is going to be. But before I do that, let me thank a few people who have brought you this particularly absurd edition of the Daily Solve. Thank you to Kathleen Quinn, Skella Chicken, and, as always, the inestimable Hood Monster for their support of the Daily Solve Patreon campaign. They're benefactors of the Daily Solve Patreon campaign, and if you'd like to join their ranks and get not just that recognition on these videos, but also the Daily Solve Let's Check the Crosses mug, you can find more information at patreon.com/dailysolve. And of course, those who back the Patreon campaign at any level get access to the full suite of bonus video solves up on the Patreon feed, as well as the new ones that go up each week. So thank you to everybody who has backed the Patreon campaign at any level. It's how I can help make this series a sustainable part of my daily work. So thank you to everybody who's backed that. I very much appreciate it. Now, on to what this ridiculous video is. So I recorded the entire video today and didn't realize that the audio wasn't working. So I was very confused when I loaded it up to try and produce the final video and realized there wasn't any of my speech, which is quite, I have to say, the sensation of that is just, it's quite terrible. I've only done it, I think this is maybe only the second time I've done that. Whoops. Sorry. So anyway, so I don't know why that started playing, but behind me is the video of today's solve without any audio because there is no audio. So what I'm going to do, but what a funny coincidence. I accidentally started the crossword and then paused it. And I just now accidentally started the video of myself doing that and then paused it. And so I pressed pause on the video, and now on the screen it says your game has been paused because that's what happened half an hour ago or whatever. Anyway, so this is ridiculous. It is a crushing feeling to realize that I've done this. But what I'm going to do, I think I've done this maybe once before, is I'm going to play this video and narrate over the top of it and hope to basically keep in sync with what I did. It's especially frustrating because I got the theme figured out pretty early, and now there's no way for me to sort of recommunicate that moment of discovery, because now I, of course, obviously already know everything about this puzzle because I've solved it. So that's a shame. Anyway, this is a Wednesday. I'm just going to get on with it. Why wouldn't I? I'm going to get on with it. It is this Wednesday puzzle constructed by Michael Schlossberg, relative newcomer to the New York Times crossword. This is his third puzzle, I believe. And it was edited, as always, by Will Shorts. Now, I started the puzzle by observing the unusual symmetry. We have this symmetry about a vertical axis, and usually we get that kind of thing when there's some kind of unusual theme or when the puzzle needs to be that way in order to allow for certain words to fit in the grid in a certain arrangement. Anyway, so here we had lettuce often used in lettuce wraps. I didn't really know what specifically was special about bib lettuce and lettuce wraps. I suppose the big leaves make sense for it, but I just figured it was a 4-letter name of lettuce. So I put that in. And then that led to a B on one down, includes secretly in a way BCCs, blind carbon copies, referencing the somewhat outdated practice of copying forms on carbon paper. Carbon copying still happens sometimes with people who come to your house and do work on your house, plumbers, things like that, who there isn't a computer handy. Breakfast chain 2 down was IHOP, the International House of Pancakes. Don't know if it's actually international or what. And 3 down, the sacred Indian plant, also called the strangler fig. Unfamiliar to me, the name strangler fig. But ginormous means big, so that was pretty straightforward. I maybe expected something a bit wackier with a word like ginormous, but ginormous means big, so that's what that is. And I'm running this slightly faster, in case you're wondering. Blend of black tea, honey, spices, and milk is chai. Chai tea, a bit redundant, but chai, simply chai. And here we have the first part of a message suggested by the puzzle's circled letters, which I did not certainly I guess I should just act as though this is happening to me for the first time. I don't know. I don't know what this is yet, clearly. Circled letters, but they are in some sort of pyramidal shape. They're sort of triangularly disposed. And perhaps they're arranged like bowling pins, but I don't think so because there are 10 bowling pins, at least in the sort of American-style bowling alley. Here we have German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, straightforward fill there. And guest essays are op-eds, opinion pieces often, and they're often written by guest contributors. Caresses down, maybe pets. You pet an animal, for instance. And the end of a college valedictorian's address, a bit of a pun with the question mark, bit of wordplay. It's edu, the end of an email address, rather than a bit of oratory, as suggested in the surface reading of valedictorian's address in college. And I must have had more to say about that. The place to nosh on a knish would be a deli, a delicatessen, a knish, a food item. I don't actually quite remember what a knish is, but I do know that you would definitely get it at a delicatessen. And here we have packed like a ship with cargo. This suggests to me that maybe this caresses isn't pets, but rather pats, to allow packed like a ship with cargo to be laden, the ship laden with cargo. And then down we have like some decisions. Some decisions are snap decisions. Here, this really looks like congratulations. Can't imagine what else it would be. The first part of a message suggested by this puzzle's circled letters must be congratulations on something, but don't yet know what. Although that, I forget, this might have been the point. Yes, I think this was the point at which I noticed this is an E. So I was wondering, is this maybe an eye exam? When you see eye exams represented in movies and things, and I mean, I've certainly taken plenty of them in my life, and I think it tends to have an E on the top, but I'm not sure. Is there actually, and I actually genuinely don't know the answer to this, is there a standardized eye exam pattern? You'd think that would be subject to abuse potentially, but anyway. Hypotheticals are ifs, so filled that in, and a cloak and dagger sort is a spy, straightforward enough. A Wall Street debut is an IPO. Oh, I went back to mention that cloak and dagger sort was spy. Cloak and dagger came up in the crossword the other day as well. Anyway, Wall Street debut is an IPO, an initial public offering, when a company's listed on a public stock market. And here we have Paris Accord with a question mark. So question mark indicates some sort of pun or wordplay. And in this case, Paris indicates that the language will be French, and accord is an agreement. So oui, yes, an accord in French. And here we have major oil acronym is OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. And 11 down, these women rule the dance floor. Wasn't really sure what was going on with this for a moment. These women rule the dance floor. Not sure. So let's go over to poet blank St. Vincent Millay, Edna St. Vincent Millay, and the brink is the cusp of war, cusp of war. And here we have the language of Pakistan is Urdu, straightforward enough. And let's go back to the women who rule the dance floor, rule in quotation marks, so a bit of a joke, perhaps. And the site of a legend, a map. You could have an inset legend in a map that tells you what the symbols on the map mean. And that finally led me to prom queens, a female student who's voted, I don't know, I guess the most beautiful at a prom, the U.S. high school annual dance. So prom queens rule the dance floor, so to speak. Here we have many a July 4th party, Independence Day in the United States, often celebrated with barbecue. And Keith of country music, Toby Keith, rang a bell for me. Pretty sure that is a country music artist. So went ahead and filled that in. And then one, Kelly of morning TV. This was another celebrity name that sort of rung a bell for me. I was fairly certain Kelly Ripa sounded familiar, so I put that in. And let's see where I went next. One with a venomous bite would be a snake, an asp. Straightforward fill there. And the sacred Indian plant, also called the strangler fig, a banyan tree. And I was sort of pleased to get this because I did not know it was called a strangler fig, but I was generally aware of the banyan tree, and it actually came up as an answer in a recent cryptic crossword I'd solved. I'd solved the Times Quick Cryptic, in this case the Times of London, as it's known in the U.S. They have I think every maybe 3 times a week, 2 or 3 times a week, they publish a slightly easier cryptic crossword called the Quick Cryptic, and I've been solving that fairly regularly. And banyan tree came up in that, and I got it right, and I was pleased with myself. But I didn't know it was called the strangler fig. So anyway, I think that's what all that explanation was about. Against is anti. That's a straightforward fill there. And the Simpsons prankster would be Bart, one of the principal characters of The Simpsons. Barely rains, I think spits here, that's sort of intermittent kind of rain. It's when it's spitting rain. And the eldest Von Trapp daughter. I think this is actually, I haven't looked anything up since I solved the crossword. I think this is The Sound of Music, right? Which I don't know that I've seen all the way through. Maybe I have, but it would have been a long time ago, and I wasn't really sure what the name of this daughter was. So I skipped it for now, put in able for fit, and lead into long. It took me a moment. I was wondering, is this around Eva Long or something? No, it is ere long, before long, in a poetic formulation, ere long, before long. And a studio sign could be on air, that could be lit up in a television or radio studio. So then we saw Lies for the eldest Van Trapp daughter. And I thought, well, maybe Lisa with an E, that's a plausible name, but it could be Liesel, that's also a plausible name. And maybe Lisa with an A, probably the least plausible of the three, but I thought E, L, and A are all reasonable ways to end this name. So I decided to look down to Fallon's late night predecessor and see if I could think of a late night host that would work in 4 letters with one of those letters. And it took me a few moments, but I eventually got to Leno, Jay Leno, and that makes Liesel, so that looks correct. Lisa with an E, I think that was in my mind because there's a character named Lisa in The Honorable Schoolboy by John le Carré, the spy novel, which I'd read. So here we have second part of the message. Congratulations on PA passing your. So here's when I decided I really do think this is an eye exam. So then I decided to find the last part of the message on passing your eye, and then I realized, well, maybe it's not exam. It could also be test. So I'm not sure. Let's check the down cross. I guess I went to root beer treat. Why did I go there? I don't know. What am I doing? I must be just talking about it. I must be just talking about it being eye exam or eye test. And anyway, tried to disambiguate that by looking at doesn't get fooled by, which could be is onto, and then not as messy could be neater, and that really does confirm that it is eye test, not eye exam. So a scornful looks could be sneers. I think there might have been something that came up around sneering or scorn or something in a recent crossword, but I can't quite remember what it was, just within the last few days. Edible part of asparagus would be the stem, I suppose, as opposed to the root. And Sega Hedgehog would be Sonic the Hedgehog, the video game character. Bedtime for blank. I sort of thought, is this bedtime for Bonzo? That sort of sounds familiar, but I don't really know what it is. And then I looked at deer's rhyming partner and thought, well, near and dear is a rhyming phrase, so that must be it. And then 41 across, Z in Athens is Zeta in the Greek alphabet, so it must indeed be Bonzo. I still don't know what that is, but it sort of rings a bell. Maybe it's a children's book. I don't know. Anyway, 5 to 1 EG is a ratio, and borderline indecent is racy. Something could be racy. It's almost indecent. And then we had a non-dairy milk is soy. And a Minecraft block made from gunpowder and sand. I'm not highly conversant with Minecraft, but based on the gunpowder bit, I thought it might be TNT, which seemed plausible. Certainly not in real life, but maybe in a video game context. And then I tried to remember the unpacking of TNT because someone told me in a comment recently, and it's what? Trinitrotoluene. There we go. Look at that. I remembered it. Anyway, probably not made from gunpowder and sand in reality, but that's fine. Like pretzels and winter highways, they're both salted. You would salt a pretzel or salt a highway to help melt the snow. And a root beer treat finally got back to this. It is a float. Root beer with an scoop of ice cream floated. And beach bottle letters, SPF sun protection factor. We learned more about that thanks to the educational comment from a viewer recently, this week, I think, in fact. An old Toyota coupe, I went to the cross for that, I believe, and came down with an illness, for instance, could be got that illness, and then that makes the old Toyota coupe the Paseo, which did sound familiar and plausible. So plain is unadorned, straightforward fill there with all those crosses, and ahead by a run could be up one. You could be up one run in baseball, or I presume cricket as well, and be up one run. Jabbered, I strangely thought maybe this was yacked. Y-A-K-K-E-D. Nope. Thought that didn't look right at all, so I got rid of it. Genres similar to indie rock. I don't know. I thought maybe alt pop, but indie rock isn't really a genre. What does it mean for it to be a genre? But I suppose it kind of is one. Anyway, I think I passed on that for now. Corrects emens. I think I paused a moment on this to consider the difference between emens with an E and emens with an A. And I believe emens with an E is only used in the context of text, whereas amens could be used in some other context, although beyond that, their meaning is not particularly different. And then we have here, after dinner coffee order could be decaf coffee, decaffeinated coffee after dinner. Don't want to stay up too late. And the garden hose shape, I think this gave me some trouble. I put curl. I thought a garden hose could be in a curl. And actress Hathaway is Anne Hathaway. A coaster could be a sled, as on snow, over snow. And chow is food. And then I thought, nuno, what is that? That's not a taboo. A taboo is a no-no. But coral isn't anything. And then I looked down, and what I saw was Dr. No originally, before I'd looked at the clue, and I thought, well, that must be the James Bond film. But no, it's not. It's Dino, member of the Rat Pack, Dean Martin. And it took me absolutely ages here to think of Dean Martin's name. I sat here for several seconds trying to re-remember Dean Martin's name, nicknamed Dino. And then that creates the garden hose shape coil in the cross. Anyway, I'm still trying to think of Dean Martin's name. That's what I'm doing right now. And eventually I think I gave up and moved on to penne alla vodka, the pasta dish. And then that made Yabbard yapped, not yacked, which looked much better. And a member of the Ratite pack reminded me of that Dino clue, so I think I jumped back to that. I can't remember if I'd remembered Dean Martin's name by then. And a cinder to be is an ember, which I suppose means the ember burns to complete ash and becomes a cinder. And I wasn't sure what was going on with this member of the Ratite pack until I saw ember, and then I realized an emu must be a ratite, a member of the Ratite family or genus or whatever sort of category of animal that is. So it's quite a clever clue, especially echoing that Rat Pack clue over to its right. So I really enjoyed that. And anyway, emu. Furnace vent connectors are ducts. You could vent a furnace through air ducts. And then that gives us this cross here. Fallon's network is NBC, or Leno's network is NBC, I suppose, looks right. And sports barrier or target is a net. So you could have a net serving as the barrier to on a sports field, or a target for a ball. Anyway, genre similar to indie rock. So again, I thought maybe it's alt pop, but I still wasn't quite willing to fill it in, I don't think. So, and I guess I decided to look at the eye test thing I think once again, I was wondering, is this some kind of standard arrangement? Who knows? What was I thinking? Boy, I wish I could remember what I specifically was saying here. But anyway, we have the heart of I Heart New York, which of course is love. And finally, that gave me the confidence to put alt pop in for that genre. Stat was ASAP. Oops, sorry, I'm running ahead of my explanation here. So 53 down was stat, which is ASAP as soon as possible. 60 across was Soho, which was Manhattan District was the clue. And so Soho is a neighborhood in Manhattan, south of Houston Street. And of course, the original neighborhood Soho in London, not derived from south of Houston Street. And then here we have 66 across. Stratford's River would be the River Avon, Stratford upon Avon, Shakespeare's birthplace. And we have Avenger with a Hammer is Thor from the Marvel films and the comics, I guess. And then Parisian Papa is père, father in French. And that completed the puzzle, the Wednesday puzzle. So I found this to be actually maybe an easier puzzle for me than yesterday's, Tuesday, surprisingly enough. But that happens. Sometimes the days don't match up in exactly the standard difficulty curve, because for every person, any given puzzle could be more or less difficult depending on your body of knowledge. Also, I did sort of surprisingly, I guess I don't know, I got a bit lucky spotting the theme. I cottoned on to the eye exam theme relatively early, I suppose, because the congratulations, once I had enough crosses on the on passing your bit, it seemed like, well, what do you pass? You pass a test. It didn't seem like that could be anything else, the on passing thing coming after congratulations. And I'd already sort of suspected maybe this was an eye exam based on that E up at the top. So, yeah, that did give me some big, long bits of fill with that full phrase, congratulations on your eye exam. And it also meant I could imagine solving this puzzle and really trying to figure out what is going on with these circled cells, these EFPTOZ LPEDPECD. I think I read that correctly. Congratulations on passing my eye test. I mean, if you were trying to figure out what those mean, it would be, I think, completely confounding and might actually make the puzzle more difficult to solve. So fortunately, I didn't end up down that rabbit hole, but I very easily could have. It's the kind of thing that I could get. I would certainly have a tendency to get distracted by that kind of thing. So fortunately, I didn't. But let me know how you fared with that. I'm very curious to know how this puzzle felt to others. I also could imagine doing this puzzle in some kind of way that played on the size of the different letters in the eye exam. I'm not sure exactly how you would do that, whether you would sort of spell out the E with black cells, maybe. I mean, that would be a very difficult grid to create, I suspect. And you'd end up with quite a few unchecked cells, which isn't best practice for the New York Times crossword. But for a theme like this, you could imagine someone trying it. Anyway, as it is, this I think worked well enough. Although I do think I kind of got lucky with my early guess as to what was going on. So do let me know how you fared. I'm very sorry about the strange nature of this puzzle. I know this is never ideal when it works out this way. I really felt quite terrible about it. So hopefully I've salvaged it into something that was basically watchable. Anyway, now that we've done that, let's read some clues from yesterday's. Well, not read some clues from yesterday's puzzle, but rather address some comments about clues and answers from yesterday's puzzle. So, first off, Ben Ward says, regarding the board game Clue or Cluedo in the UK, as this is not the first time you've mentioned how you find the UK's naming Cluedo ludicrous, I feel duty-bound to mention that the game was invented in the UK and, as far as I can tell, was given the name Cluedo a few years before it was licensed to Parker Brothers and renamed by them as Clue for North America. Personally, I prefer the name Cluedo for its play on Clue, or for its play on Ludo, and find the American name a little pedestrian. Well, that's fair enough. I always find the name Clue relative to Cluedo to be a more elegant name. So I suppose one man's pedestrian is another man's elegant. It's fair enough. I know I play up my objection to Cluedo because I just find it a little bit ridiculous. It doesn't actually bother me all that much, but I do think the name is kind of absurd. I suppose perhaps when this particular game was invented, maybe the novelty of themed board games like this was greater or something, and the idea of sort of tying the pun into Cluedo felt more necessary, whereas I suppose I don't feel as though there's a need to indicate in the name of the game that the game is a game, right? I mean, it wouldn't make any sense if all of the movies had movie puns in the titles of them to signify that they're movies. But again, this is a very silly objection that I have. It's obviously not any kind of problem. Kathy Swope explains the meaning of pellucid. It is translucently clear. So I was right with my suspicion that it was related to clarity due to its inclusion of the word lucid, lucid in style or meaning, she says. From Latin perlucere, to shine through. And I think that modern day Latin is sort of pronounced with a bit of an Italian style of pronunciation, I think, which wouldn't have been the case, I don't think, in the days of classical Latin being spoken as a live language, but I think it is now. So maybe perlucere would be how it's pronounced today, to shine through from Latin. And so thank you, Kathy Swope, for that explanation. And ZOR95 explains that kleptos, which were referenced in yesterday's puzzle as an antagonist in the Mario games, are birds that appear in some Mario games from the mainline Super Mario 64 on Nintendo 64 and Super Mario Odyssey on Switch. They tend to steal Mario's cap, which is a big problem in Odyssey especially, as that game is all about the hat. So I suppose this explains why I didn't recognize that name. I've never played Super Mario Odyssey, and I have maybe just a glancing familiarity with Super Mario 64. So So that's that, I suppose. I wasn't familiar with this antagonist, the Kleptos, the birds that steal Mario's hat. So thank you. And ZOR95 also explains that the Higgs boson is the manifestation of the Higgs field, which interacts with other particles to give them mass. The name the God particle comes from a book of the same name by Nobel laureate Leon M. Lederman. And this was from yesterday's puzzle, in which Higgs boson was referred to in a clue as the God particle, references the God particle. So there we have it. And those are the clues from yesterday's puzzle. And that's all we have today. Thank you for joining me on this sort of improvised edition of the Daily Solve. I hope it was all right. I will very, very, very strenuously attempt not to make this mistake again. I think this is the second time I've done this, and I do not want to do it a third time. I hope I never make it to the third time, to the charm of a third time of making this mistake again. But hopefully it worked out for you. I hope you enjoyed the puzzle. If you did, please do subscribe to the channel. And if you know someone who you think might enjoy this series, please do pass it along. Maybe direct them to a different video for their first exposure to the Daily Solve. But whatever makes you happy, I suppose. And it would make me happy for anyone to recommend this series to anybody else in any form, either directly or through your online community of choice. And any new subscribers, heartily welcomed. And finally, speaking of online communities, actually, if you'd like to join the Daily Solve online community, you can find the Daily Solve Discord chat server in a link in the description field underneath the video. And I can't remember if I mentioned this earlier. I don't think I did today. But if you subscribe to the Daily Solve Patreon campaign, which is how you can directly support this channel, you can also get access to an additional chat room in the Daily Solve Discord chat server. But beyond that, it's free for anybody to join. Links to all of these things available in the description field underneath the video, as I said. So thank you for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow for hopefully a much more typical example of this series. That'll be the Thursday puzzle, the first tricky puzzle of the week, as I like to think about it, and one with usually an ambitious theme, which I do very much enjoy. So join me for that. Come back for that. And until that point, please do have an excellent remainder of your Wednesday. Take care.